Hi, fifth graders. I'm here in our math book on page 7. This is lesson 3 of unit 1, and we're going to be talking about how we can use multiplication tables to find equivalent fractions. So here you can see our basic multiplication tables. These should look very familiar to you. And you can notice that some of the rows are in bold. They're highlighted. We looked at this in 4th grade, so this might look familiar to you. You can see that if you form a fraction with a number from the top row and the bottom row, it's going to be equivalent to all the other fractions formed with the same numbers from the top and bottom row. So for example, 3/5 is equivalent to 6/10. They're equivalent to 9/15, etc. And you can see under there that they've listed all of those fractions. So you could put equal signs in between all of those fractions because they are equivalent, they're worth the same. This is a great way to form equivalent fractions if you have a multiplication chart handy. Here's another example, just using different rows. So instead of using our 3s and our 5s, they're using the 4s and 7s. 4/7 is equivalent to 8/14, etc. And they have all the fractions down there listed. So remembering that these fractions are all equal to each other. Now they have some for you to complete on your own. So color rows 4 and 9 in the first table. Use the table to complete. And yes, I do want you to complete this at home, so make sure you do remember. I will be checking your math books at some point. So you want to make sure that you get it all nice and filled in. So it said to color rows 4 and 9. Now I have to find fractions that are equivalent to 4/9. So if I'm looking at the next one after that, here was 4/9. Now I'm going to go 8/18. Hopefully you can see the pattern there, and you'll just keep going across the entire row. And then the directions for the next one, color rows 3 and 8 on the second table, so on the table up here, and doing the exact same thing. Now, for the last two, they didn't tell you to color any rows, so you don't have to, but you can definitely use the charts to help you. Or if you'd like to do it the way we did yesterday, where you're multiplying each fraction by a multiplier, by a magic 1, you can do it that way too. Just make sure that they're all equivalent. That's a common mistake, especially when we're first learning this, that you might have a couple, the first couple might be equivalent, and then the rest of them might get off if you do your multiplication wrong. So make sure that you're double checking all of your work there. Okay, moving on to page 8, going to the top of page 8 here. Now we're looking at fraction bars. So we looked at number lines, and then we looked at using a multiplication table. Now we're looking at fraction bars. So remember, a fraction bar is almost the same thing as a number line, but the difference is that it's shaded in a space, so it's a full bar, and it's not always labeled like a number line is labeled. The lines aren't always labeled. But you can see that this bar is divided into 4 sections, so we know that that's fourths, and then 3 are shaded, so 3 out of 4, or 3/4. But we're going to use these fraction bars again to do what we have been doing, which is finding equivalent fractions. So if we want to switch to 8ths from 4ths, the first thing that we need to do is we need to think about, well, how many sections am I going to divide up this fraction bar into? So make sure you have your pencil handy. If you're thinking that we should split each of these into 2 in half, you would be correct. And then you can count. Remember, don't count lines. It's not as tempting to do that on fraction bars as is number lines. Be careful. If you would start counting here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, you'd get 9, which isn't correct, right? There are 8 sections. So counting the whole section, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, so we've got 3/4. Now the idea is we have to figure out what our magic 1 is. What is our multiplier here? So 4 times what equals 8? And you can think about it. How many sections did you make in each section that was already there? We made 2 in each one, right? So that's another way of thinking about this. 4 times 2 equals 8. It has to be the same number on the top because that's what a magic 1 is. 3 times 2 equals 6. So we've got 6/8 there. When it asks you for the multiplier, it's asking you, what is the number that you put here in your magic 1? So our multiplier was 2. And you'll notice that, of course, it is how many sections you divided each of the original sections into. Let's try the next one. So the next one wants us to go to twelfths. We still have 3/4 here. So how do you think we're going to go to twelfths? As the numbers get bigger, personally, I like to do my magic one first. That's just how my brain works. So I like to have the number and then go back and draw it. But for you, it might be easier for you to start drawing these in and seeing how many you need to get up to 12. So for me, I'm going to go over here first. 4 times what equals 12? Well, that's 3. And then I have to put 3 on the top. 3 times 3 equals 9. Okay, so I know my multiplier is 3. Now that I know that I have to divide each of these sections into thirds. Thirds are a little bit harder to do, but we can do them. I like things when they're even when I'm doing fraction bars because then you can start just by dividing them in half and then divide that in half, etc. For thirds, you have to kind of find that middle section and then go out. And that's true, of course, for all the multiples of 3. Okay, so we've got a multiplier of 3. 9/12 is our equivalent fraction. And the last thing that you have in your book today is a note from Puzzled Penguin. Just like in 4th grade, you need to make sure that you're actually writing out your response in letter form. So it should say, Dear Puzzled Penguin, comma, and then you need to make sure that you explain in detail what the mistake is. I'm assuming there's a mistake because there always is, but then again, I don't know. 5th grade Puzzled Penguin. Let's find out. Dear math students, I tried to find a fraction equivalent to 5/6. I multiplied the denominator by 2 to make smaller unit fractions. Okay, so far that makes sense, right? You could multiply 6 by 2 and then you would get a bigger number, but the fraction section would be smaller. This can't be right because 5/6 is almost 1 and 5/12 here, what he got when he did multiply 6 by 2 is less than 1/2. I really like the way he's thinking, wait a second, 5/6 and 1/2 cannot be equivalent. He's thinking about, does that make sense? Is my answer reasonable? Why doesn't my method work? Hopefully, 5th graders, hopefully you're able to see that he only multiplied what? He only multiplied the denominator. He forgot to multiply the numerator. So when you write your response to Puzzled Penguin, 5 times 2 equals 10. There's a little hint for you there. Make sure that you are detailed. All right, that's the end of lesson 3 in Unit 1.